1945. America stands tall. Enemies vanquished. Duty done on the battlefield. And the greatest riches on earth at its feet. More than half the world's oil. 2/3 of its gold. And the talents of 140 million people ready to build modern America. We are pioneers and trailblazers. We fight for freedom. We transform our dreams into the truth. Our struggles will become a nation. Post-war America will be turbulent, dynamic, and overwhelming. More change and more progress than in the last 400 years put together. But some things haven't changed. American courage, vision, and determination will always shape the nation. The character of the country and its people, forged in the past, drives the story forward. The USA has ended World War II a superpower. Its economy turbocharged, primed to construct the future. The greatest generation is ready for peacetime. Their ambition knows no limits. The average American family already earns 15 times more than they do in Europe. The USA hums with economic potential.
This was the greatest moment of collective inebriation in all of American history. And this country was giddy with the sense of accomplishment, pride, prospects for the future.
America's future looks bright. Invention and innovation have always been the things that bind its people together. But America's sheer size threatens to pull it apart. The landmass is 9 million square miles, and the road system isn't working.
And then you saw this vast wilderness in front of you, and what am I going to do with this?
The older highways, the white shield highways, would go across the country, and then when it came to a town, it became the main street of every town. And there was always bottlenecks.
It's almost impossible to get around by car. Only half of the roads are even paved. Eisenhower, the new president, has seen it for himself. As a young soldier, he drove across the nation. It took 62 days. America has faced this problem before: how to move people and goods across its great expanse. Each generation has come up with its own solution. The rivers were America's first highways. 1811, the paddle steamer is launched, taking goods upriver as well as down, opening up the Mississippi to more trade. The Erie Canal is America's next great conveyor belt of commerce. 1825, it links the eastern seaboard to the Great Lakes. Like the steamboats, it spawns cities along its route. The canal transforms New York into a boom town that quadruples in size. Now it's time to get America's roads working like the canals and rivers before them, to get the country moving again. And President Eisenhower makes it his mission to get the job done.
He started looking at the development of this country in the 50s, and he really saw the vision of what the interstate highway system could do. And it was amazing. It changed America.
There's a common theme to the greatest innovations in American history, and that is these were things that helped people or goods or ideas travel about more freely.
The Interstate Highway becomes the biggest engineering project in American history. It cost the nation $129 billion, 2.4 billion man-hours of hard work. And just like the railroads a century before, it's built with manual labor and sheer grit. America's landscape has been shaped by transportation. The Transcontinental Railway opened up 500 million acres of land and 8 new states. 200,000 miles of track hewn out of hostile terrain. Faced with a mountain, find an inventive way of blowing it up. Nitroglycerin, black powder, dynamite. The interstate is the largest earth-moving project in the history of the world. 1.5 million tons of explosives. 42 billion cubic yards of earth removed. Enough to fill more than 8 million football stadiums.
We can build anything we damn well please. We're going to go about it. And it did change the country.
The freeways, the interstate highway system, you could connect the cities in a way that no one had seen before, on a level no one had seen before.
Today, there are 46,876 miles of interstate highways, enough to wrap nearly twice around the world. And the journey that once took Eisenhower 62 grueling days, now it can be done in 4. Those with the means can take to the road.
There was nothing that could stop a person from being what they wanted, going where they wanted, doing what they wanted.
Freedom to travel where you want, a freedom not to be stuck to where the trolley rails go. A freedom and a lifestyle that came with it that really celebrated that sense that the car was your ticket to personal freedom.
This is a country that will not accept being shackled. Perhaps it's because of our geography and we were able to expand at will and move wherever we wanted to.
Good roads need more cars. Bigger, faster, better. 1946. 2 million of them are manufactured in America. And that's just the beginning. It's the age of the automobile.
When I came to America, the first thing I wanted to think about, how can I get hold of a car? I didn't have enough money, so I shared with 2 friends to buy a jalopy, and I crossed the country with that. I had a love affair with cars from the very beginning, because this method of movement that can enable you to see vast expanse of space.
From as soon as they could get their hands on one, Americans have always liked their cars. Now the whole country has fallen in love with the automobile. 1955. Americans are spending $65 billion on cars, buying 8 million of them every 12 months. By now, the USA is making 80% of the world's automobiles. More than 20,000 cars a day roll off production lines across the country. 4 times as many as the Model T at its height.
It was now a car in every driveway, maybe 2 cars in every driveway, one for mom and one for dad, and maybe one for the oldest child.
We have this ideal of American life as the 2 parents, 2 children, brand new gleaming American car with fins the size of Pennsylvania coming off the rear of it.
Once Americans get into their cars, there is no going back. The interstate highways take them where they've never been before, meaning some places get left behind.
no one really thought about how it would fundamentally change these communities. Because on Route 66, they would always say, we didn't have to travel, the world came to us. And overnight, when the ribbon cut on the interstate highway system, they were bypassing the town. And many towns died. You know, they call it death by interstate.
The interstates bypass the towns, but they lead somewhere else, to America's next invention, the suburbs. America has always used technology to overcome the challenges of its vast open spaces. Carving out the environment, building houses for its people, shaping its future.
Technology has built America. Every major development in the history of America, technology has been the center of it.
1607, 50 million trees, 9 million square miles of wilderness, 60 million bison. This is what the first settlers were faced with. Within a year of arriving at Jamestown, they had built themselves a fort, a church, and 50 houses. If America needs it, they build it. If people need housing, they will always find a way.
That is the American dream, to just create a new life for yourself, reinvent yourself, get a little patch of land somewhere, grow some crops, and be the master of your own destiny.
America is about to embark on its biggest house-building project ever.
This greatest generation and what they went through. And then came home and just went back to being civilians.
Houses have been built before, but never on this scale. 13 million over the next decade.
Because at the end of the day, I do want to go home. I want to drink a few beers, and I want to watch my football, and I want to have my backyard barbecues and celebrate the 4th of July.
And the problem to be tackled this time is the sheer scale of what's required. 1946, 330 new babies delivered every hour. That's one baby every 10 seconds. It's the baby boom, and they all need housing. 1 million acres are plowed under each year of the 1950s for housing plots. 3,000 acres a day. It's the birth of suburbia, the next innovation. Building houses outside the cities to give new families a new life. Farmland into family homes.
New York loses about 2 million people over that period. And it looks like people are just going to slowly kind of hollow out the inner city.
And they would buy a new, perhaps Saltbox house in Levittown in New York, or its equivalent housing development across the country.
All of these icons of sort of 1950s domestic culture, suburban culture that begin to emerge during these years.
Levitt and Sons are family builders. They'll give their name to America's most famous post-war housing, the Levittown. Here on this Levitt and Sons construction site, they're building houses almost as fast as babies are born. One every 16 minutes. 8 a.m. trucks unload. 9:30 bathrooms arrive. 11 o'clock floors are laid. 300 windows a day. 30 baths a day. These techniques are inspired by the industrial age. 1840, Lowell Mills, Massachusetts. The manufacture of cotton is transformed by mechanized looms. 1918, Henry Ford's Detroit production line, the automobile revolution. Now, in the 1950s, America is mass-producing family homes. Levitt & Sons call it the Ford production line of house building.
This is human enterprise, human ingenuity, putting these buildings there. They were put there by free men and women making their own free decisions.
By 1951, Levittown, New York has 17,000 identical new homes. A second Levittown is built in Philadelphia, a third in New Jersey.
My father grew up very poor during the Depression. He fought in World War II. It was a big deal for him to get out of a poor neighborhood and buy a 50 by 100 lot in Franklin Square, Long Island, where I grew up.
There was a feeling that the country now has achieved regained prosperity after the long decade of the Great Depression, which had made many people think that prosperity might never return.
A family home for less than $8,000. That's $71,000 in today's money.
Down to the eve of World War II, down to 1940 or so, only about 40% of Americans owned their own homes. By 1960, one short generation later, 60% of Americans owned their own homes. And that's just one way to quantify the spread of affluence and prosperity and all that came with that in terms of self-confidence and enthusiasm for the future.
The American home has developed since the Pilgrims into really the center of the family. The family is the most important social unit in the United States, and it should be.
Through the centuries, the family home has shaped America and showcased American innovation. Plantation houses built by stonemasons. Log cabins made from what's available on the land. Merchants' houses, the backbone for the early cities. Each time, technology has transformed how these houses have been built and where they've been built, overcoming the extremes of America's climate. 1913, Los Angeles booms when the LA Aqueduct brings in water. Without it, the city would have stayed an outpost. Now, it's air conditioning that wins the South. 1902, invented in New York. 1952, $250 million worth of aircon units are sold. Hispanic architecture had once kept the Sunbelt states cool. Now, it's aircon. In the 1960s, more people moved to the southern states than moved out after the Civil War. America's toughest landscapes opened up for housing.
California and Florida became states that were overrun with new people moving in and wanting to live a better life.
Living a better life goes back to the big innovation of the 19th century. Steel. 1875, Pittsburgh. Andrew Carnegie has a vision. Large-scale production, making steel the greatest building material in the world. Malleable, versatile, strong, and now affordable. Used to construct everything from skyscrapers to refrigerators. Labor-saving domestic appliances, freeing people to do more with their time. 1925, the family wash takes 6 hours. Soon, washing machines will do the job in 45 minutes.
One of the kind of common themes that runs throughout the history of America, all the way back to the founders, is this obsession with technology and gadgets.
If you look at America's greatness and a standard of living that was built in 200 plus years, this is America's great story.
The land of plenty has become a land of technology. And soon, that technology will take America even further.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Massive engineering projects, uniting the nation. Americans working together to push the boundaries of science and technology.
There was a unity of ideas and purpose, and that's what's brought us together. It was a spirit of exploration, like when we went to the moon.
The impetus for the Apollo space program came from aviation. Invented by the Wright brothers, accelerated into production by 2 world wars. Aerial combat, one in the air, and built by American technology. 300,000 aircraft made in the USA from 1941 to 1945. Within a decade, harnessing that technology, America will lead the world into the jet age, and from there, into space. 1959. The Boeing 707 flies between New York and Los Angeles. The journey that once took 4 days by road now takes 6 hours. Today, over 2 million make that trip every year. The push to fly faster and further is unstoppable.
Airplanes, rockets, spacecraft, and people on the moon, what a magnificent testimony to the progress of humanity.
1961, President John F. Kennedy tells the world that America will put a man on the moon.
I can still remember as a little kid, John F. Kennedy standing up there and say, we're going to go to the moon by the end of this decade.
America had been a land of frontiers from the early 17th century. And the frontiers had moved gradually across North America. And now it seemed to make sense that the frontier would expand beyond the boundaries of the Earth.
Space is uncharted territory. Like the expansion westwards, a grueling 5-month journey through the interior. It hasn't stopped America before. The pioneering spirit drives people onward.
Americans are impatient. They want to see new things, new opportunities.
And they challenged millions of people into putting this program together, and you know what? They did it.
We just made it. July of that last year of that decade, we just made it.
400,000 Americans worked directly on Apollo 11. Flight controllers, engineers, scientists, seamstresses. After 8 years, they're ready for the big one.
And the fact that this team of dedicated people, from the astronauts all the way down to, every engineer, to achieve that goal, it really is one of the truly inspiring stories in American history.
A timeline planned down to the last second. 17,000 people in Florida to handle takeoff. 131 people man the mission control room in Houston, Texas.
10, 9, ignition sequence start.
3,000 tons of metal and 3 astronauts set off for the moon.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We set our sights on the moon, and everybody felt that, it sounds impossible, but we're in this business, and we're going to do it.
More power than all the waterfalls in North America combined. 60 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. 1 million gallons of fuel, enough to drive a car around the globe 400 times. All the teamwork and discipline still leaves the astronauts to face the unknown alone.
When they approached the moon, they did a burn to slow the command module down so they could go into lunar orbit. If it didn't work, they would have shot past the moon into the distant solar system, never to be seen again.
Less than 30 seconds of fuel are left when the landing craft touches down.
And then he said, "Contact light on. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed."
Roger, 20. We copy you on the ground.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I thought for a minute, this isn't beautiful. It's magnificent desolation.
The Stars and Stripes, first raised in 1776, now planted on the moon.
Walk around the moon and look back at the world, you know? A view that nobody else has ever seen.
We believed they could do anything. We believed NASA's technology was perfect. It was a genius of the best of American science and engineering, and it was.
You have to remember what we had come through leading up to that summer night in 1969. We'd lost a president to assassination. We lost his brother to assassination. But for a few minutes, one summer night, we all stood and stared up at the heavens.
That became the first of 9 spaceships that went to the moon. And 24 Americans reached the moon, and we landed 6 out of 7 times.
And I think for the country as a whole, it remains something of a metaphor. You know, you always hear people say, well, we need an Apollo project to solve this problem or that problem.
The lunar landing unites America. It is the nation's greatest scientific achievement. Technology is powering forward. But America is held back. There's a fault line that shames the nation. Race. African Americans have been part of America's story from the beginning. As foot soldiers and fighting men, civilians and citizens, doing the dangerous job of whaling in the 19th century. (1619), the first Africans arrived in Virginia. Although some will gain their freedom and own land, most were slaves. Over 200 years, slavery became a key part of the American economy, particularly in the South. By 1861, nearly 4 million slaves. They helped to fuel a $2 billion cotton boom that makes the South rich.
The ghosts are very much alive today in people who have, if not the actual memory of that, but a family member of a memory of what that was like, and the social memory of what it was like when people were treated as things.
Now, in 1963, drawing on the inspiration of their deeper past, African Americans are about to change everything.
This country, once and for all, grasps the nettle of the most vexed issue in all of this country's history, which is race. We waited 100 years after the Civil War to take that issue up again.
The Civil War was fought in part over the right to own slaves. When it was over, African Americans were supposed to be on an equal footing. But segregation then took hold in the South.
And so you needed that second Civil War. I call it that. Others would not perhaps call it the same thing. But it was a different kind of Civil War, but it had the same goal as the first Civil War did. and it was led by different people.
20th century America will see a long struggle for equality. Race riots in Chicago in 1919 leave 38 dead. In the segregated South, separate schools, separate buses, separate restaurants. Twice as many unemployed. Change begins when 1 million black soldiers join up in World War II.
And blacks demonstrated they could fly planes just like anyone else. They could sail ships. They could do anything a white soldier could do.
They don't know it yet, but these soldiers are the beginning of the modern civil rights movement.
Individuals more than willing to fight and die for our country and for the freedoms that our country represented, yet freedoms that were not still truly shared by all Americans.
And the first step towards equal rights is taken. July 1948. The military is desegregated. No more whites-only regiments, no more blacks-only regiments. Just Americans, shoulder to shoulder.
When I came in, my superior said to me, "We don't care if you're black, we don't care if you're white, we don't want to hear any hard luck stories, the only thing we care about is performance."
But outside the military, it is a different story. Blacks do not have the same status as whites.
The people among us who in many cases were doing the dirty work of society, the people who were making the hotels ready for us to stay in and serving us food in restaurants that wouldn't seat them as guests.
The civil rights movement of the 1960s will use words and actions to convince the world that the time for freedom has come, that African Americans are ready to fight for justice.
So people say, "Why do you even identify yourself as black?" Because I'm black. And because everybody else would identify me as black, and did for most of my life. Now, they might not think that same way about my children, but I will not shrink from that. And the single reason why it won't is because of all those who went before me.
To put right the wrongs of slavery. That's what motivated those who went before.
Come on, y'all.
Blacks who, despite being enslaved, were already fighting for freedom. Inspirational people like Harriet Tubman,
Come on!
a former slave. From 1849, she was part of an underground network bringing some 300 slaves to freedom. One of America's first civil rights activists.
It's a story that's not just about black people, but it's about human beings caring for other people and having the courage to do what is right, even at peril to yourself.
The voice of the modern civil rights movement and its most determined and eloquent leader is Martin Luther King, Jr. Baptist minister, preacher, and campaigner. August 1963. Martin Luther King Jr. leads 250,000 in the March on Washington.
His marvelous speech that every American knows at the Lincoln Memorial, talking about "I have a dream."
America is telling the world that blacks and whites have come together to say, we're ready to make the next step toward equality. And a young black preacher talked about a dream that connected back to the American dream.
What he did was hold a mirror up to the face of all Americans and said, "Hey, it's been a couple of 100 years. Now let's do what the Declaration of Independence actually said."
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
The promise of 1776 back on the agenda.
Now this is a culmination of everybody together saying, this is our moment. This is the time for us.
Whites looked inside themselves and said, you know what, why should black kids go to second-rate schools?
That's not good for the country. That's not good for what we are as a people. That's when the tipping point was reached.
A year after the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act is passed through Congress. Voting rights extended. Racial discrimination outlawed, segregation ended. America's problem with race does not disappear. But the way is paved for an African American to reach the White House.
To be able to inspire our kids and let them know that they have such greatness out there. They can be anything they want to be, and we can mean that.
Fighting segregation and discrimination by law, and we're changing hearts and minds. We're moving out of that, and memories tend to fade, but not for me. I'll never forget.
But 1960s America still has a problem. A growing challenge from beyond the nation's shores. A rival that wants to blow the USA out of the water. July 1945, New Mexico, the Manhattan Project. Robert Oppenheimer leads the team that develops the atomic bomb. The original weapon of mass destruction, terrifying in its power, and America got there first.
Only the Americans in the end had a plausible chance at success because they had the enormous resources that they could invest in this thing on a crash basis and make it happen.
But someone else wants one too. America's great rival on the world stage, the Soviet Union. Now that America has the bomb, they'll stop at nothing to build their own. Communist spies even infiltrate the Manhattan Project. The arms race between the world's superpowers has begun.
You could not possibly have grown up in this country in that era without being very acutely aware of that great diplomatic standoff between the Soviet Union and the United States that we call the Cold War.
After 1949, when the Soviets got the atomic bomb, this was a foe that could wreak horrible damage on the United States at an instant's notice. It was a time unlike anything Americans had lived through before.
It's the Cold War, and Americans are on red alert.
We did these duck and cover drills routinely at school.
First, you duck, and then you cover.
Siren would be tested, and we were instructed how to get under the desk and cover your head and your face so that the debris from glass blowing in from the windows when the atomic bomb went off downtown wouldn't hurt us.
Both sides stockpile weapons to defend themselves against possible attack. From 1940 to 1996, the USA will spend $5.5 trillion on nuclear weapons. That's nearly $20,000 for every man, woman, and child in America.
It was the arrival, really, of the specter of real nuclear war. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were no longer seen as isolated, one-time incidents.
By the mid-1950s, there are over 40,000 defense contractors working for the federal government. America has always won wars using technology. In the Revolutionary War, the accuracy of the Kentucky rifle was a key factor in defeating the British. In the Civil War, the Mini Ball could travel 600 yards and shatter bones on impact. In 1959, America's first intercontinental ballistic missile. It can travel 3,500 miles and destroy cities. 200 years of American weapons finding their target and defeating the enemy. But this time it's different. This is a war that no one can win. If an atomic bomb is used, there's no going back. Every time the Soviets make a move, Americans fear the worst. 1960, the U-2 incident, when a U.S. spy plane is shot down over the Soviet Union. 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the standoff with Moscow over nuclear weapons in America's backyard.
Actual warheads, the actual bombs were in Cuba. Were already there. And the delivery system was coming over.
Suddenly, it seems very important to have adequate supplies in every home.
I remember vividly people going to the local supermarkets and buying up all kinds of canned goods and throwing them back in their cars and driving up to the Siskiyou Mountains or the Trinity Alps or the Sierra Nevada range to get out of the blast range of any nuclear weapons that might fall in the Bay Area.
There are rumors that an attack may come from within, that Soviet spies are plotting to bring America down. The Senate sets up hearings to unmask communists in the government and media.
And they saw ghosts behind every corner and enemies on every bookshelf. So this effort to root out the enemy at home became a defining moment.
After World War II, when the Cold War emerged, there was this feeling that the country could split apart very easily politically, and there was a desire that that not happen. So there was this kind of sort of self-imposed conformity.
If the communists are atheists, Americans are religious. If the communists are acting collectively, we are true individuals. If the communists want to break down family structures, we are the tight nuclear family.
Communism. Armageddon. These threats to the nation's freedoms are just too close for comfort. The United States has seen off superpowers in the past. Digging deep to defend what matters.
Maybe the most important values we have are family, faith, and the American flag.
But these values, which Americans have defended since the Revolution, are about to be challenged in unexpected ways.